All right, everyone. Looks like we're live. So thank you for tuning in to the very first Daily Gwei live stream. So I'm calling these things the Daily Gwei Refuel. Basically, what they're going to be is a show every day, every weekday, that covers the previous 24 hours in the Ethereum and crypto ecosystems. Kind of everything that's happened, biggest news, things that are just really interesting to talk about. The content will go for about 20 to 30 minutes. We'll start off with talking about the prices, uh, like of the day, like Ethereum, how DeFi is doing, things like that. Just a couple of minutes there for a market update. Then we'll move into the rest of the content. So let's get into it. So I actually put out a tweet just before. I was looking at the Ethereum chart and I kind of scrolled, zoomed out, I guess you could say. And I was like, wow, we were only at, $470 just 5 days ago. It was quite crazy to think about that, considering the kind of run that we've seen in ETH over the last few days, up above 600, with all the hype that was around kind of ETH 2 and getting that deposit contract full of ETH. So yeah, it was cool to zoom out a bit, and you can obviously zoom out even further and just see that this has been just a crazy run in November, right? We've gone from at the start of November in the high 300s to about 600 today. So obviously, Bitcoin's also been doing really well. It's got pretty close to all-time high, right? But yeah, I think Ethereum's been doing extremely well, and that's, I guess, what most of you would care about. Finally, DeFi. DeFi obviously had like a pretty brutal, few months where it was, I guess, like a month, October, where it was basically in a mini bear market, right? And then it just had like a very strong bounce, and he's still on the way up. People might feel like DeFi in general is kind of like, in a holding pattern, and I think it is, while Bitcoin and Ethereum continue to go up. But in general, it's still been trending up, right? And this is the DeFi Pulse Index here that I'm looking at. And yeah, the general trend is still up, which is really, really cool. All right, moving on from the prices. So I think this came out about 24 hours ago now, I think, but this caused a bit of a stir in the community. So what the TLDR is that Yearn or Yearn or Wi-Fi or whatever you want to call it, announced that they're basically merging with Pickle, or kind of like absorbing Pickle into their ecosystem. And the reason why this caused a bit of controversy is because the Pickle community, I think, from what I could see, feels kind of hard done by. The I guess not just about the price and everything. Like, you can actually see what it did to the market here, right? So obviously a few days ago, Pickle had an exploit against its system. There's $20 million worth of user funds was lost, and you can see the dump here on the chart, right? And then goes sideways for a bit, and then I'll give you one guess what this candle is. It's basically when the announcement came out that there was this kind of merger acquisition happening. So yeah, that's what that candle is there. And then yeah, we've got some more sideways action here. So yeah, basically it's going to be, Pickle's TVL is going to go into Yearn. The Pickle token basically becomes an inflation token for the Yearn kind of ecosystem, which I don't think this is the first kind of like merger we've seen of protocols, but it's the first, I think, yield farming merger that we've seen, because there's actually a lot of these yield farming or yield aggregators popping up, right? We have Harvest, we have Pickle, we have obviously Yearn, and then there's like Yaks, and I think there's a few other smaller ones. But it's kind of like this long tail effect where the biggest ones are going to have the most TVL, and then you're going to have a bunch of smaller ones, and it doesn't actually make sense to have all these smaller ones around, simply because the benefits is pulling the capital together, right? So fragmenting the capital out into these potentially hundreds of vaults or like kind of like strategies, is not only like a massive security risk, but it's also inefficient from a capital kind of efficiency perspective. So I think this is actually a smart move by Yearn. It like kills some of their competition, right? Even though they didn't advertise it as this. I really think it's smart for them to be absorbing these other kind of aggregators and just basically kill competition before it can sprout up. And this isn't something kind of a new concept or anything, but it's definitely new within like DeFi and crypto protocols in general. I remember reading a piece actually a couple of years ago, I think it was. I can't remember who wrote it. But it was basically about like, how would a protocol absorb another protocol, right? Would their token become the other protocol's token? And it was kind of doing a thought experiment around layer one blockchains. I think that is kind of like not going to happen because there's no one really cares enough for that to happen. But what I do think is going to happen is we're going to see more DeFi mergers happen here. So Yeah, you can go check out the link to this in it's not in the ETHUB newsletter yet. It'll be in next week's, but basically on Andre's Twitter feed, you'll be able to find the link to this. There was a thread put out by Wyan, of course, detailing everything here. And there was actually a really good thread put out by this account, Autism Capital. Don't let the name fool you though. This is actually one of my favorite follows on Twitter. They do a lot of really good analysis here. So, they took a very hardline stance here, and they think that the way Pickle handled this was, they used the word shamefully and disgraceful, basically. They made comments about Banteg, who is one of the Yearn core devs, hanging around the Pickle server, Discord server for a bit, which makes a lot of sense. And apparently there was some like plan to have like a Pickle kind of DAO, and like they're calling it a LARP or just like a misdirection or a fake out, basically. So this is just gives more details around, I guess, the inner workings of the Pickle community and how they feel about this. Um, and they take this hard stance. And Andre just came out of the basement to announce this merger, right? This post merger formula is basically a direct copy of Curve with their token economics and things like that. And yeah, just in general, they were speaking, I guess, on behalf of the community. They had a few conspiracy thoughts around this and things like that. But yeah, the Pickle community is not happy. I haven't personally been on the Discord, but from the comments I've seen, it's not a very pretty picture right now. So yeah, I mean, this is always going to happen, I think, unless there's like a mutual kind of thing where the two communities agree to kind of merge, I guess. Because, if the devs say, okay, well, we're just going to merge our protocol into this competing protocol and the community doesn't have any say in it, then obviously the community is going to feel hard done by. But, if I had to put my conspiracy hat on, I think this is exactly what YN went for, right? It's like, just kill the competition, basically. And I think they've succeeded in that. I'm not sure what's going to happen with the Pickle token going forward. Like, is it going to, go up because of YN? Is it going to go down? It was interesting to see that Pickle actually, pumped a lot, but Wi-Fi didn't move at all. So, and because of that, I actually figured, like, I saw it going up, and I'm just like, wow, this is going to just go down so quickly because it's just like this kind of like FOMO and like whales kind of pumping it up based on this news. And we've seen this play out with like other projects that Andre has launched, and not just him, but like Wyon, I guess in general, have launched like Keeper Network is the same thing, and it's very dangerous, I think, as well. Just putting this news out there with like no kind of prior announcements, no forewarning. It's very dangerous for people speculating on these things. So I would advise against buying into hype news like this, or else you'll end up in this green candle here, and maybe you're smart enough to end up at the top, but a lot of people from my experience end up down here, which obviously isn't very fun. All right, moving on from that. So Tim Byko, who, for those who don't know, is actually the one kind of leading the coordination for EIP 1559. So I would actually call him the Danny Ryan of EIP 1559. So for those who don't know, Danny Ryan is the lead coordinator for the ETH2 effort, basically. He makes sure everyone's like in sync and things are getting done, and that's what Tim is doing for 1559. And everyone knows what 1559 is. It's basically to fix the Ethereum fee market and to introduce a burn mechanism for ETH. So this is a really, really important EIP or Ethereum improvement proposal that has been talked about for years at this point, right? But yeah, it's on a Ethereum testnet now, and you can actually go try it out yourself too. So all you have to do is head here, follow this guide here, and then you'll be able to kind of like check out how this works on a mainnet, on a testnet. And what's interesting is EIP 1559 is actually on other blockchains right now. It's on Filecoin and it's on Celo. So this stuff, it's on. I think this is maybe one of the first times it's on an Ethereum testnet where you can play with it, but it's actually on other mainnets too. So it kind of validates that this thing is good. It's going to do what we want it to do. It battle tests it on other chains and things like that. And that's what people are worried about. It's like, is it going to actually do what we want it to do? Is there going to be bugs? Things, all those sorts of things. So I think that's kind of like very important. So I definitely suggest going to check that out and playing around with it. Next up, we had Loopring announcing their Loopring wallet. So this has been in the works for quite a while, I think. They had a kind of a beta version out there, but basically, this is using their ZK rollup technology to scale and things like that. So you can go download this kind of now on Android. I think iOS is coming soon, and this kind of lets you do like payments and things like that inside the Loopring wallet. So, obviously layer 2 has been really, really hot on Ethereum lately. We're not just with Loopring, but with like a bunch of other teams doing a bunch of other things. Synthetics is playing around with it. It's rumored that Uniswap V3 is going to go on layer 2. We have a bunch of other teams. We had Arbitrum recently fork Uniswap, put it on their layer 2, call it ArbiSwap to show off their technology. So this is just another kind of like app that's come out now, and that offers these basically scalability benefits that we're looking for with layer 2 tech. And Loopring's a stellar team. I mean, they have their exchange as well, their ZK rollup exchange, which I've used, which I love. Their app looks beautiful. Like you can see the picture right here. It looks great, right? This is the kind of stuff that we need to get out there to get mainstream on board, right? We need to abstract away all these kind of like gas fees, especially the expensive gas fees for users. We need to make these interfaces really, really nice. And yeah, I really like what Loopring's done here today. So definitely go check that one out. All right, this is actually pretty big news today out of Coinbase. So Coinbase is actually going to be suspending all margin trading products starting tomorrow, based on guidance from the CFTC, which is one of the biggest financial regulators in the US. So this is actually made me really bullish on, obviously DeFi margin trading products, right? Like the more that these centralized products get shut down, the more you're going to have these DeFi products just gain traction for these things. Like, so margin trading products, I actually fully expect to gain a lot more traction because of this now. And it's kind of like, I don't think regulators are doing this, but it's kind of like if you imagine a kind of hydra and you chop off a head and then, two more sprout up sort of thing. That's exactly what you do when you take down these centralized things or like block centralized kind of players from offering this. People still want this product. It's not like, hey, Coinbase doesn't have margin trading anymore. Oh, well, I just won't do margin trading anymore. No, that's not going to happen. People are going to find other places to do it, like whether that be an offshore centralized exchange or another centralized provider, or they're going to move to a decentralized provider, which I think as time goes on, more and more people will opt for, simply because with the centralized providers, there's always that risk there, right? There's always that risk that it'll get shut down. Offshore exchanges, some of them are pretty dodgy, so you don't want to trust your funds there. So why not do it on DeFi? Well, I mean, the biggest reasons, right, you wouldn't do it right now with DeFi is scalability, right? It's been notoriously hard to do these sorts of products on Ethereum because the scaling is not there. But as I just spoke about, we have layer 2 going online for a lot of products. So I think we're going to get that scalability like very, very soon for margin trading products. And there's a few projects out there working on this sort of stuff. And it's not just the, I guess, like regulatory front of things, but like just doing things in DeFi. Obviously, a lot of you kind of watching and listening to this will know what I mean. It just feels so much better, right? You have self-custody of your funds. You can quickly move between different apps on Ethereum, right? It's like a super highway for your capital, basically. It's just, it's a completely different experience. And a lot of people that, maybe just strictly trade on centralized exchanges are going to be forced into these decentralized ones, and decentralized products now, and going to experience that. And if they're anything like me, once you experience a decentralized product and a self-sovereign kind of product where you own your own funds and you're able to move really quickly on Ethereum, you don't want to go back to a centralized exchange or a centralized service. I just use them as fiat on-ramps and fiat off-ramps these days. That's what I think a lot of people will be pushed towards as time goes on. So yeah, looking forward to seeing that happening. Unfortunate for Coinbase, obviously, here. But that's what you kind of like have to deal with when you're in the US, right? The US has some of the strictest financial regulations in the world, and a lot of jurisdictions actually follow them. Like here in Australia, we actually follow a lot of what the US does, for better or worse. The UK as well, I'm sure, right? Canada, all these kind of Western countries, or quote unquote the Five Eyes, right? They will kind of do similar things. So that's why I personally always keep like a pretty keen eye on the US, especially because they do set the guidance for a lot of this stuff for the majority of the Western world, which is where most of crypto is right now. But like on the other hand, the Asian space of crypto seems to take a different approach here. But I'm not too clued in there. I think there's like a bit of a language barrier there still. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the kind of West and East approaches to crypto as we get more in the kind of mainstream consciousness. I think as we go into this like another bull market that we have coming, I think what's really going to be interesting to see is how the regulators respond, right? Because we're going to have a flood of retail coming in, and then those regulators are going to inevitably get flooded with complaints from users who have lost money for one reason or another, whether that was a bad investment or they used a product that kind of like, quote unquote, maybe rugged them, like, right, or kind of exit scam them, or they're on a centralized exchange and they feel cheated or something. There's any number of reasons, and it just means that, if enough, it's like in a classroom, if enough kids go crying to the teacher about something, the teacher's going to react, right? Whereas if it's just one kid, the teacher's going to be like, oh, okay, just, relax. Okay. But if it's 10 kids, they have to do something. It's the same with these regulators. If it's just one or two people going to them and complaining, they're like, oh, well, we don't have the resource, we don't have the time, who cares? But if it's like, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people coming to the regulator and being like, I'm getting screwed here, then they're going to respond. They have to. It's like their mandate to respond. So I'm a bit worried about that because I do know a lot of the new people coming in will do that. Down here in Australia, we're commonly referred to as a nanny state because we put in so many forms of regulations because people just go complaining to the government, right? And it's quite worrying for me, particularly to see regulators make more of these moves. But I'm still hopeful that regulators will take a nice approach here and won't actually kind of like have a heavy-handed approach. Because if their mandate is to protect investors, then I don't think taking a heavy-handed approach is actually going to protect any investors, right? It's just going to make people lose money because the market will just dump, right? And there'll be like FUD and things like that. So I hope they move slowly and carefully here. All right, last thing to talk about. Actually, I should go to this tab. So we are Mainnet Ready. So obviously, pretty much everyone listening to this would know that just yesterday, we reached the minimum required amount of ETH in the deposit contract to launch ETH2's Beacon Chain on December 1st. So, and now today, what ended up coming out was all the client teams put out their Mainnet Ready clients. So you have Labs with their Prism client out now, release 1.0.0, Mainnet Ready, you can go download that. You have Sigma Prime's Lighthouse client, Mainnet Ready, you go download that. Same thing for Nimbus as well, and same thing for Teku as well. So 4 clients for you to choose from. How do you choose the right client? Well, that's what I wrote about today in the Daily Gwei newsletter. You can go check that out at thedailygwei.substack.com. But for those of you who prefer for me to give you the TLDR, I'll give it to you now. Basically, what I talked about was the most important, kind of considerations you have to take into account when choosing a client. So for me, number one thing is don't choose a client that everyone else is kind of choosing. Not based on the fact that the client is worse than the other ones or that the teams aren't great that are building these clients. They all are. They're all superstar teams. All the clients are really great. I've seen like the benchmarks across them. They're all doing what they should be doing. But in saying that, there are some clients that have more mind share than others, right? So, everyone's probably heard of Prism from Prismatic Labs. Everyone's probably heard of Lighthouse from Sigma Prime. Less people have probably heard about Nimbus and less people have probably heard about Teku. And that's simply a marketing and brand awareness thing. So what we're going to see happen, and what we actually saw happen on the test nets, was that most people ran Labs' client, right? The Prism client. Now, we don't want that to happen on Mainnet. We would ideally, right, in the perfect world, we would like to see maybe a 30% split between, 30% for Labs, for Prism, 30% for Lighthouse, and then a 20% for Nimbus and Teku. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to be more heavy on the Prism and Lighthouse side of things, just from what I've observed in the past. But the newsletter was basically to encourage you to go for a minority client. So personally, I'm going to be running the Lighthouse client. I do want to support my fellow Australians, Sigma Prime. They're up in Sydney, so I definitely want to support them there. I've encouraged other people to run non-Prism clients just because the default is going to be Prism, right? And you're going to have like especially the newer people and the quote unquote the noobs to staking, they're going to go for the easiest kind of client. And Prism is actually the easiest from what I've seen. They also have like a really nice user interface, so that's going to appeal to a lot of people. So definitely want to keep that in mind when you're picking a client. Now, you might be wondering, why does this even matter? So I wrote about it here. I won't go into it too much now, but basically the multi-client architecture is built into Ethereum from day one. Basically, it was ETH1 is a multi-client protocol. You have Geth, you have Parity, which is now Open Ethereum. You have Nethermind and Besu. Those are the main ones. Unfortunately, as time went on, we had what ended up happening with Parity was that the team, they're now focused on like Polkadot and other endeavors that they're doing. So they said, we're not going to maintain Parity anymore. So what ended up happening was that Gnosis took it over and, renamed it Open Ethereum, and they've been managing that, which is a great client, by the way. I run Open Ethereum myself. But Geth ended up basically making up for most of the network, which is again, not saying Geth is bad. It's probably the best client because it's been around the longest. It's the most battle tested. It's got amazing efficiency improvements on it, so you can sync it really fast and things like that. But it's not great for network health. And I'll give you a perfect example. The other day, or a couple of weeks ago, we saw what happened with Infura and Geth, right? Where Geth, they did I mean, you guess you can call it like a stealth update, right? Where they found a critical consensus issue in Geth, and it didn't affect the other clients, but affected Geth. So they thought, okay, let's put this out there. We don't want anyone exploiting it because it was very easy to exploit. Let's just put this out there in a normal kind of software release for Geth, and let's let people download it, and then eventually we'll tell people about it, right? That was fine. I mean, fine. It depends where you sit on the fence, but that was what it was at the time, right? And what ended up happening was that the consensus bug or whatever it was, I'm not that technical, but whatever it was got exploited by was actually the Optimism team, the Layer 2 team, and that triggered kind of like forking the network. Now, most people had already updated their clients so that they weren't on the old client that had the bug in it. But Infura, the infrastructure provider that a lot of the ecosystem uses, was on that old Geth version. They're on a version from December 2019. Now you might be thinking, oh, that was a really old version. Why were they on such an old version? Well, because upgrading Infura's infrastructure is not just a simple thing. It's not like me or you on our home PC click a few buttons, get an upgrade. No, they have to consider a wide range of different things, right? Because they're serving tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of users every single day. So because of, and to go back to my point about why the multi-client architecture is important, is because imagine if none of the clients had upgraded for Geth, right? And this bug triggered. Geth would have been off the network. It would have forked off completely from the other clients, and then we would have had like this big catastrophe where we have to basically use the social layer to get back into consensus across all the clients. So we dodged a bullet there, but this is the perfect example of why we want multi-clients. Because actually now that I think about it, back in 2016, there was a similar bug where I think it was Geth or Parity, one of the two went down, but because the other one was still running, the network could go on. So there was no network downtime. There was no need for that social recovery. So that was quite amazing to see. If you look at that actually worked in practice. So that's why we're harping on about this ETH2 multi-client architecture as well. So long story short, go pick a client if you're going to be staking, especially if you're going to be in the Genesis block. It's too late to get in now, unfortunately. But if you did get in before the cutoff, go pick a client. They're all amazing. As I said, I've seen all the benchmarks and everything. They're all going to do what you want them to do, and it's just up to you which one you want to pick. So go do some research. Maybe you want to try and run like more than one of them basically, and see which one you like. I think there's still some testnets around that you can connect to, or you can just watch some videos of people setting it up and things like that, because it is important, right? You want to pick a client that's that's going to do the job. It's not going to get you penalized or anything, or lose your ETH or anything like that, because that's a real possibility. But I don't think any of these clients are going to do that. I think they've been tested for months and years at this point, battle hardened by some really amazing protocol kind of engineers and client implementers. So definitely go check that out. All right, that's all I've got to talk about today, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the first Daily Gwei Refuel. We'll be back tomorrow at the same time, and we'll be talking about everything that happens tomorrow.